What's up guys, it's Saiyan here coming at you with another Transformers TCG video. Today I will show you my Matchbox deck profile. This is a deck I have constructed a couple of days ago, so it's still pretty fresh. Luckily I had some time to do a little bit of fine tuning, so I'd like to show you guys the current state of this deck. The general idea is that we are, as you can see, running a 5-wide team and just trying to annoy our opponent as much as we can. A little bit on defense, not necessarily because we want to, but of course, for those of you who don't know what Sports Card Patrol does, they do have tap abilities, but they all trigger by having to scrap a blue card. So kind of makes sense to run at least a handful of blue cards in the deck, but also the blue weapons are pretty good in terms of pierce output, and of course when you have such a low attack value, you're usually trying to make up for it by making sure that whatever you attack, the damage does stick. So we do have a bunch of goodies to look at. It is actually a 2020 distribution of weapons and upgrades. Just really quickly looking at the characters, our main guy in the middle is Nightbird. Now Nightbird will be the only bot your opponent can swing into if they go first, because of course all the other guys will have stealth while they are untapped. And that is a major part of running this deck, constantly directing where your opponent can or cannot send their attacks into. So that's one of the main concepts. Obviously, if you can ever get your opponent to not one-shot one of your guys, you're already doing well. The longer you can prolong that battle, the more likely you are going to be able to grind them down. But this deck does take a little bit of a planning ahead. When you're playing the deck, you might want to plan ahead at least not just the current turn you're having, but also where your opponent will then be attacking in, and then who you're going to be attacking with the turn after. So you do want to look ahead a little bit and just try and plan out your moves a turn ahead or so. So Nightbird on the flip side does have a very neat bounty effect, obviously being one of the few mercenary cards. If it does KO one of your opponent's characters, you can play an action from your opponent's scrap pile. Now, it is very hit or miss. If your opponent just reshuffled and has practically nothing in there, you might just be able to select from the couple of cards they flipped for defense. If they are just about to shuffle up their deck come next turn, then you will probably have a massive selection. But let's be honest, in this game you probably will find at least one action that you can play and it will be useful for you. So it's a little bit of an extra benefit, but we're certainly not predominantly looking at flipping any of these guys and using any of these particular effects. Of course, we do have Hyperdrive and Detour on this side. They are our two specialist characters, and Detour draws you two cards. If you tap it and discard a blue, and Hyperdrive does an inspiring leadership where you scrap a blue, tap him, and then you draw 3 and you have to scrap 2. It can be sometimes good if you find your hand really weighed down by cards that you absolutely don't need, particularly towards mid to late game. Perhaps Nightbird has been taken out and you can't use a couple of the cards, or the one specific card that's particularly in there for Nightbird. So this is more of the drawing hand manipulation section. Of course, Nightbird's main effect is that every time your opponent plays an action, they have to deal 1 damage to one of their characters, which is super useful, actually very annoying. And then we have Roadhugger here, who on tap and discard a blue gives any one of your characters +3 attack. This is really useful. And he also has 7 health. It's 1 more than the 2 6s on this side, so that can be useful. And the big hitter and the last guy you always want to make sure will be your last one on the field is Raider Blackjack. When he flips, he gets +1 attack and +1 defense for each of your sports card patrol cards in your KO area. So then we are in that particular case, when these 3 are down, and probably Nightbird will be the first one to go. Most of the battles he tends to be the first one that gets KO'd. But you're looking at Raider Blackjack being a 6 attack, 8 health, 4 defense character. Really important about Raider Blackjack, every time any one of your sports car patrol becomes untapped, you can repair 1 damage from it anytime. So, if you swing with everybody and it's time to untap, all of your guys are untap. As long as you keep Blackjack in alt mode, you will be repairing one of them as well. And I found that actually more useful than I thought it would be initially as I put this deck together. So let's start with the weapons. First and foremost, we got 3 laser cutlass. This goes on any one of our warriors, any one of our characters. They are all 7 stars or less, so we got obviously 2 4-stars, 2 5-stars, and a 7-star character. Laser cutlass is our bread and butter. Try and get as much of this weapon out as possible. That Pierce 3 is absolutely brilliant, and you still get a +1 damage on that character as well. I recently included 3 copies of Energon Axe. Whilst you can only put it on a damaged character, you will find that more often than not, you actually will be able to do that. But to be very clear with you guys, the 3 Energon Axe and 3 Grenade Launcher are interchangeable. I'm currently trying out the Energon Axe. I have been running 3 Grenade Launchers before as well. That's really good as well. I just wanted to see a little bit more Pierce in the deck. It is very likely that the 3 Energon Axe will become a side deck card, and I'm gonna keep on running with the 3 Grenade Launchers in this deck. Currently have 1 Fusion Borer and 2 Aura Disruptor Blades. That's going to be 3 Fusion Borers once my order arrives. It's a must-have Fusion Borer, let's be honest. It's just such a good card that, any deck can pretty much run 3 of it and you're not losing out on it. But in terms of Black Pip, you can flip the same of the Aura Disruptor. You still get that 3 attack. It might stick around if you flip a black for it, so that's pretty good as well. And of course, we are predominantly running blues and Black Pip cards in the deck, with the exception of our 3 copies of Turbo Boosters, and we do have a few white pips as well. Turbo Boosters are currently the only orange ones in the deck. They are an absolute must-have in the deck. Again, just like Laser Cutlass, Turbo Boosters are our bread and butter. Put it on cards. When you put it on a character, you can untap it. Well, you have to untap it, and it also gives you +1 attack in the utility spot. Absolutely fantastic. Honestly, one of my favorite cards in the game, to be quite honest with you guys. It is just so good. Still trying to get a little bit more benefit of Nitro Boosters, but if nothing else, I do like it for the double black. It is very useful on the double black, and particularly, as I said previously, we're looking at keeping the cards in alt mode most of the time, so you will be getting that 2 black regardless of which one you attack with. In case for whatever reason you just have to do a standard 3 attack swing, that's your main point to attach a Nitro Booster, and then you can just obviously untap the character and scrap the card, and if nothing else, you're gonna get a damage healed off of it with Blackjack, so that can also be one of the useful things to do here. Little cute thing. I do run 2 microcapacitors. Still on the verge with this because, again, as I said, I probably maybe use the tap ability once a game, or perhaps when my opponent has done all their swings and I have like 2 characters, maybe 3 characters that can still attack. Well, that's where microcapacitor can shine. You can actually get that +3 attack activated by Roadhugger. Microcapacitor kicks in, you then untap Roadhugger. You still get the heal of Blackjack because they are sports car patrol on both sides, so that's pretty cool as well. And you can kind of get around it. It is one more untap card basically in the deck, but it's still very much sometimes it's in the deck, sometimes it's out the deck. I'm still really trying to get my feel for this card. And last but very much not least, we have 3 force fields in the deck. Now I have also tried Medic's Protective Shield. I don't like it. I'm going to be very honest, because most of the decks will have absolutely no problem dealing 1 damage to one of your characters before they swing in, and that will just absolutely take any of the advantage that you get off the Medic Shield. Whereas Force Field is a little bit better. It is still quite iffy with these low health guys. And the problem with Force Field is if your opponent has low attack, is what I was trying to get to. The easiest way to get around Force Field when you do have these low health guys is, well, I'm just going to hit you twice for 3, and then if you have a 6 health guy, then the Force Field does nothing. But as I said, I've taken out the Medic's Protective Field because that really not seem to be working at all, whereas Force Field, if nothing else, can be pretty useful for Nightbird, and even Blackjack can be a good target for Force Field. So this is it for our weapons. Let's move on to actions. The most important card, as I said, for Nightbird are the 3 copies of Dual Wield. Now, naturally, you can play it to any of the characters you have, but Nightbird actually gets a weapon plate on it from the scrap pile. And when I get the other 2 fusion borers that I desperately need, just imagine if you can whack a fusion borer onto Nightbird, then play a dual wield and put one back from your scrap pile, and you're swinging for 10 Pierce 6 without even having flipped any cards. That is just super, super, super good. Problem with dual wield is that, of course, because Nightbird will usually be the first target for your opponent, it fairly often becomes a dead action in the hand, but it's still double black pip, so that is still a fantastic thing to have in the deck nevertheless. Now this is a recent change. I was running 2 Vaporize, but I actually changed that to 3 copies of Disarm. And the main reason for that is because Disarm is worded in a way that you can actually take your own upgrades back into your hand. And one of the big problems with, not really a problem, but it's certainly an inconvenience with Turbo Boosters, is once you play it, that's it. So if Disarm is useful for that one big attack, where your opponent has an armor or has an annoying utility or has a bunch of stuff on it, you can just disarm it, put them back all in their hand, and then you can swing with no particular problems. But you also get functionality out of it by being a blue card, so you can discard it to any one of the 4 tap abilities, and you can potentially play to one of your guys who's already done its second swing. You might have done a swing, then untapped it next turn with Turbo Boosters, done another swing. You can pick it back in your hand and then replay back on the same guy, again do another swing. So this little combo just allows you to even further establish this where your opponent can attack or cannot attack. Imagine you got one of your guys that has 1 health left on it. You might be able to pick a turbo booster up from one of the other guys with disarm, play it back on the guy, untap it, heal 1 damage off it, and then just go swing. You're probably gonna lose it next turn, but again, every time your opponent is unable to KO one of your guys out with its first swing, you're doing it right. Now the big reason why we run Nightbird here are 3 copies of Opportune Offensive. This is basically Fusion Borer again, but in action mode. Now Fusion Borer does not have the restrictions that Opportune Offensive has. You have to have a mercenary in your starting team, and you can only use it on a Decepticon. But it still allows us to, in effect, run 6 Fusion Borers in the deck. So that's +3 attack, +3 Pierce. Fierce is Dragon Ball CCG. +3 attack, +3 Pierce, and that is just doubling down on this absolutely beautiful effect of dealing 3 damage with no repercussions. Your opponent cannot defend against it. Talking about Pierce, we of course run 3 copies of The Bigger They Are, another bread and butter card for the deck, just like Opportune Offensive. It is basically a nice little variation on Opportune Offensive, You definitely get the +2 attack, whether you go into one of your opponent's cards that has more stars than your attacker or not. The +2 attack is static, you always get that. But again, if you attack into somebody that has higher stars than your character, then you get Pierce 4 as well. So again, just even more Pierce, even more annoyance, and making sure that the attacks do stick. Now we're running 5 cars, so if anybody wasn't expecting us to run Start Your Engines, then you were wrong. Naturally, we are running 3 copies of Start Your Engines, the beautiful Energon Edition foils. Um, and again, just another untap ability. Flip each of your characters back to car mode, and then you can untap one of your cars. Not that you're going to be flipping back many of your guys. Again, as I said, we're not flipping too much, but it can be useful every once in a while. Particularly if you swung with somebody, you can flip them back, and then by making them stand, they will then get their stealth activated again, so your opponent will have to attack to whoever is left tapped. Fantastic card in this deck. Love it, love it, love it. One of your very modular cards. I love Scouting Mission so much because, again, it's got a Pierce pip, it's got a blue pip, so it's defense, but it's also aggressive. And again, it's worded in a way, do 1 damage to any character its owner draws 2 cards. So often you will just say, okay, you know what, I'm about to attack my character, and I know it's going to heal that 1 damage back with Blackjack's effect. Or if you got a guy that's got like 4 damage on it, a 5th one doesn't really matter. Your opponent's probably going to take it out again. You're just going to draw 2 cards. But every once in a while, when one of your opponent's characters is left on that 1 crucial health, and you play Scouting Mission, and you just say, you know what, KO your guy, you know what, draw 2 cards. I don't care. Do it. Because you get rid of that one guy which they may not be relying on, and every deck kind of, in my opinion, needs to have at least one playset of a card that allows you to at least deal 1 damage. But Scouting Mission obviously has all these different functionalities, and the more functionality you can squeeze out from a card, the better your deck. And then finally, again, this is a fairly recent iteration. I haven't really tried it yet, but I did notice during playtesting that very often my hand was very light. So why not run Backup Plan? And if you draw it later game and you have Dual Wield in your hand and you don't really want to use it, because the real beauty of Dual Wield is that you can get a weapon back onto Nightbird from your scrap. Well, just scrap it with Backup Plan, get a fresh hand of 3 cards, and that will give you good opportunities, hopefully. I was running Treasure Hunt here before. I just didn't like it. It just doesn't... it's not consistent enough. I think Treasure Hunt does really shine when you decide that actually you probably want to have maybe 22, 23 upgrades at least in the deck. But you know what, guys? Correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if you like taking your chances on Treasure Hunt, and leave a comment down below. I hope you've enjoyed this little deck tech video of my Matchbox characters, and of course I will see you guys next week. But up until then, Saiyan signing out. Massive peace to all of you.